Woody.
Look at those trees. All over the place. That's why no one wanted to leave Wellington, because it was when she hated it. Right. Now, as you possibly heard with our conversation, it's a miserable day outside. It's warm and fine, but it's windy. Typical Wellington weather. And we've got these tapes we made of Mum about 18 months ago. And we've decided to transpose them onto a cassette tape that we can distribute amongst the family. Right, Mary.
It's the 25th of January 1993. It's at Wellington Anniversary Day, and as Brian said, we've been going to do these for a long time. Today's the day.
Yeah, and you had another beau.
Yes, he was an Irish boy.
And Albert Lawrence was an expatriate Englishman,
Oh,
boys.
after to come back from the war.
Did this boy come back from the war?
No, he was killed on the 2nd of June
Was he?
after he went away.
You must have been just a young teenager,
I
eh?
thought, I was 17 and I thought the end of the world had come.
God, I never knew that before. You've got a few dark secrets, haven't you?
No, it's not a dark secret.
Well, little...
That's why you remember when Stephen came up, and it was his first girlfriend that she... This chap was, he was an Irish boy. There was 3 brothers that came out from Ireland. And he was a very nice chap, he was very good to me, and I was very fond of him. And my dad was very understanding when he was killed.
Because he'd be an Irishman.
Oh,
Naturally.
He was a good chap, he was a
Was
good
it?
fellow. Oh yes.
How old was he?
good. Oh, I suppose he'd be about 60 years or more older than me. He wasn't very
How many
old.
years old?
Eh?
How many years older than you?
About 6.
Really? And then what
I
happened
was
when...
17. He was
When did you
killed.
meet Dad?
After he came back from the war.
Well, how did you meet him?
Very casually. With some other people.
What was he doing at that time? Working on a farm or what?
He hadn't long been back from the war, and he was looking for work. He was with some, he'd come up to see one of his war colleagues, a chap named Billy Wills. And strange to say that Billy Wills is really his daughter. Was a relative of Gordon O'Leary's wife,
Was it?
a cousin or something like that.
God, it just shows you how events can change your life, doesn't
It's
it?
all mixed up. But no,
But your father, Dad was a real, he was a real colonial. He worked in the bush and he knew the
well,
land.
you see, Dad, he was horse mad. Now that's not the beginning of it either. I'll tell you from the beginning, when he left school, he went to work at Simmons's seed shop.
Oh, that's right, in Hastings.
In Napier?
Yeah.
In Napier.
And he built with the bloke because he wouldn't ship the rotten spurs.
Yes.
He dumped him. Well, that was quite noble. That was quite the right thing to do. I don't mind him, don't blame him for doing that.
Well, he dumped him, you see. And then he walked out because he was the boss's
I
son.
can see one of his grandsons doing that too.
Yes, he just walked out and left him. So then there was a chap named Jack Roller. He was married to a lord, to, what's her name?
Who?
Well, I can't remember her name now, I forget. But she lived down here in Hastings. They were living in Hastings, and I knew her, and I knew them all. But his name was Roller, Jack Roller, and he was training horses.
Mm.
And Pop got a job with him, was working with the horses, and got to know the horses. And later on, he got a stallion of his own.
Dad did?
Yes,
Yeah.
he had a stallion, and made a bit of money out of that, I think.
You raced it?
No! He
What's
had it serving
Mares?
other mares.
Oh, what sort of a horse? Oh, you wouldn't know.
Well,
It
I
was
don't
long
know
before you
what
met
it was.
him.
It was race, you know, it was a racing one, but not the type they get today. Anyhow, Grandma never liked him in those days. A jockey or anything to do with races was sort of frowned on.
Is that
They
right?
were supposed to be very nice, and Grandma was always a very
Straight sort of person.
straight-laced person in a
Really?
way, a wonderful woman, but she wanted the best for a family.
You weren't, but you were Eileen.
Eh?
You weren't Bid, you were Eileen.
Well, no, his family, Pop's family, always called me Eileen. Grace still does, not.
And to your own, you're a Bid.
Yeah, I was always Bid at home. To Dad, I was Biddy girl, and to Uncle Dave, I was Ike.
Really?
Because when I was a kid, I had a dummy. You see. I used to go around a parent beach looking for it, and I'd say Ike, 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 like that. And Uncle Dave christened me Ike. And until he died, he always called me Ike.
He was killed in a motor accident in Henderson, wasn't he?
Yes, he was killed in my ways.
Your family, now, you've got as far as the First World War. What was the chap, this Irishman's name that was killed in the First World War?
Paddy Finn.
Paddy, well, he must have been an Irishman with a name like that.
He was.
And how was he killed, you know? Did you ever find out?
Sniper.
Whereabouts, in France?
In France, yes.
Very shame, isn't it?
On the 2nd of June, he was shot.
A lot of people killed him. All wasted. Never mind, it's all history now.
The funny part of it was when the war started, he enlisted, and they wouldn't take him
She was an Irishman.
because he had flat feet.
Farm that you were brought up on. When you were a child, your earliest memories of that would have been as a farm or as a part farm, part bush clad, part rubbish, part what?
Well, I never in my young days, I was born there,
Yes,
not long after I built it. I was the first one born there.
yes.
And I don't remember it, of course. My earliest memories of going down to the cow bale. And I'd have to get the cows perhaps into the bale. And eventually it was milking, night and morning, whether you liked it or not.
Was the bush on the land, or
Oh, yes.
there's
Oh,
still quite a
yes.
bit of bush?
Oh yes, there was the big burn and the small burn. That's where they'd fall in the bush and burnt it, you see. And one was the big burn.
Burn as in set fire to?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
There was no virgin bush left on it, no permanent bush left on the land when
Oh
you
no,
were
no,
there.
no.
Was there any permanent bush around you at that time?
Not on our place.
Was no-
Oh
around you?
yes, there was a little bit on one patch, what we called the ridge. There was a big ridge.
Now what about the land around you? Was that all clear feld and farms?
Most of it, yes, yes.
Now what year would this have been?
Oh,
So we're talking about the 1910, 1914, 1909?
Oh, it wouldn't be. No, it wouldn't be. It would be about the 1902 or 3.
Oh, it's long ago as that.
Auntie Hannah was married in 1904.
So that photo that we've got hanging in the passage at our house in Strathmore was taken in 1904,
Yes.
and you were about a 4-year-old then.
No, I was 5, I think.
Oh, yeah. You look like about a 5-year-old.
Yes.
Ah, so the farm would have been quite new at that time.
It was new, yes, it was new. And, they fenced it, they had to fence it too, remember, it all had to be fenced.
How much do you know about your father's life in Ireland before he came to New Zealand?
Very little, very little. He talked very little about it.
Really?
No, they were very poor, apparently they didn't even have tea every day. I think I've already told you about the story about...
Yeah, Mother gave him a hiding information.
Yes.
Well, tell the story, please.
Well, it was the one story he ever told us about anything like that. And he said his mother he was only a kid, a little kid, and his mother had someone come in to see her. And she made a pot of tea for them. They had a cup of tea, you see. And his dad apparently was out working somewhere, and when he came home at night, the kids run to meet their father, naturally. And he went out and he said, Dad and Mum had tea today. And his dad whacked him because he thought he was telling tales on his mother.
It must have been very poor.
It was
What sort of an accent did he have?
just like John McCormick, the singer.
No.
Yeah,
Very
he
pleasant
had a
accent.
wonderful,
Rich Irish brogue.
wonderful accent. He had a wonderful voice altogether.
And did he have a lot of Irish friends around at that time? Or?
No more Irish friends than other friends, no.
There wouldn't be a lot of Irishmen around, because when I got that photo of Auntie Hannah's wedding copied off, and I had it in our Chuck Price in Newtown, and I showed a bloke. I was quite proud of this thing, and I showed a bloke who was a teacher at Wellington College, and this bloke I think taught English, I'm not sure. And he said, because he was an Irishman, he would have worked on the main trunk. Well, he was dead right.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. Well, there were a lot of Irish immigrants come out, and that's where they worked on the main train.
Wave
And
and
if
God.
you look at one of those books that's there, the early days of John Lee, things like that, there's quite a lot in there about. And you can get those history books about this, you know, how they built the main train. And they only built it up a certain distance, I think it was to Hamilton they went. And then Joe Ward finished it, didn't he?
Oh. A bit before my time, actually.
Yes, dear, it was before your time.
Now, what about the Maoris that lived around Hunterville at that time? Would it be the Maoris with the moco?
They were more at Rata.
Were
Yes, down the Rata way. There
And
was
did
a
they have
settlement of Maoris at Rata.
they? Any tattoos on them? Were they that old? Any old,
I
real
can
old?
recall more when we used to go once a year on a picnic excursion to Wanganui, the
Yeah.
school kids went. And I can recall seeing old Maori ladies with their pipes, with,
Yeah. And the blankets
with a tattoo.
and the bun hat.
Oh, they had all sorts of different things, but I can always remember seeing them sitting in the gutter on the avenue in Wanganui, you know, on the footpath, smoking their pipes.
What about men? Did you ever see men with tattoos?
I suppose they did have them, not so much. We never had a lot to do with them. They were down right away.
There wasn't a lot of mixing between the two races at that stage.
There weren't so many genuine Maoris. Well, they were all genuine Maoris there, but there weren't the Maoris that you see today. The Maoris that you see today have only got a spoonful of Maori blood in them. They're not real Maoris. They try to make a big tattoo for
You
what they
reckon they are?
get. But the genuine old Maoris weren't like that at all.
Huh?
They weren't like that.
How did they make a living? Did you know? Worked
They
at what
worked.
though? They raised cattle
They
chop down
worked for the
trees?
farmers.
or did they?
Yes, all the Maoris down right away, they used to work for the farmers, and they'd work in mills and sawmills.
Oh, of course there'd been a lot of mills around.
There was a lot of sawmills.
In the back country, yeah. Still milling timber.
There was a sawmill, there was one I think up at Oneighty, but there was a lot of mills. That's where Paddy used to work.
Uncle Paddy.
No, Paddy Fenton that I told you about. He used to work up at,
How did you meet him?
he was a cousin of Pat Sheely.
Oh, was he?
Yeah. And Uncle Dave married another cousin. Her name was Sheely too. But Paddy Finn was one of their cousins. And Uncle Dave's wife and Auntie Hannah's husband, they too were cousins, but their name was Sheely.
Right, now, when you married Dad, you met Dad just after the First World War.
Yes.
Now, where did you go from there? What happened then? You were married and where did you live?
We were married on the 2nd of October 1920 in St Patrick's Church in Palmerston North.
Where?
Yeah. Yeah.
Have a big ceremony, just a quiet wedding?
No, very quiet wedding.
Because there wouldn't be any
We
money
just
there.
had an afternoon tea. There was no big fuss. And we had afternoon tea in the tea rooms.
Who was there? Who was at the wedding?
Oh, a few of our friends, a few of my friends.
Auntie Rose, Auntie Coon?
No, Auntie Coon was supposed to have come, but there was a flood, and it was October,
Well, who was there?
and she couldn't get out. Oh, I had different friends there. And Johnny Nolan was
Any of your family? Grand and Granddad?
Auntie Kath was there. Her husband, no.
They didn't
Mum
come
and Dad
either.
weren't there. No,
Must have
they-
been quite...
They weren't big weddings like they have today.
Were they?
It's not about family. Hannah had a big wedding,
No.
but she was down. When Hannah had that big wedding she had a big wedding, my father had to borrow the money to have it.
Really?
Yeah. It was £50 he borrowed.
So when did you... £50 was a lot of money in those days.
Yeah.
Well, that would have been the equivalent of about $5,000
Well,
though.
we were all
Six,
dressed
10.
up like Jackie. We all had to have new clothes.
Did you?
They all cost money.
Now you met Dad in Hunterville, and you went, where did you say you went down? You got married in Palmerston. Where did
Yeah.
you work then? Where did Dad work? Huh?
Fielding
You worked on a farm. Well, he worked in a mill, didn't he?
worked in not a big sawmill, a mill like Jones's.
Small mill.
Odlands it was.
Oh,
Odlands.
that was the first contact with Odlands.
Yeah.
It carried it on after before the war. Yeah.
And that was straight, pretty well straight out.
Timber yard more than a timber mill.
Timber, yeah, but yes, it was a timber yard. Yeah. And
when
we
did you-
lived
when
in
did you
Fielding.
start
Ted
to-
was born in Fielding.
When did you first start to meet Auntie Hilda and Uncle Jack and all those sort of
Oh, I met Auntie Hilda, of course. We were married before Harry,
Yeah,
and they were married quietly, just like we were.
yeah.
And, well, I met the family before.
What about Grandma and Granddad?
I met them before we were married.
Did you?
Yeah.
You came down to Wellington to meet them. Oh, they lived in Napier at that time, didn't they?
In Hastings.
In Hastings.
No, they shifted down to Wellington before we were married. They lived in Lucille Street in Hastings.
Well, how would you get to Hastings from Hunterville in those days? By train?
That was the only way to get, by train.
Yeah.
Well, there were motor cars, of course, but you'd go by train.
Mm.
I think there were buses too, if I remember correctly.
Mm.
But I remember going down to Uncle Fred and meet Uncle Fred before we were married. And he lived in Fielding. And we first lived in Fielding for a while. And then we went up to Waitoto. Work on a farm.
Oh, that's right. Up there. That's when Ted was born and Ethel was born.
No, Ted was born in Fielding.
Yeah, but Ted Ethel was born up, coming down,
Ethel?
trying to get down to hospital on the road.
Ethel and Kevin were both born while we were in Waitoto.
And I was born in Hunterville.
And you were born in Hunterville.
7 years later. Yeah. They must have been pretty hard times when there was no work and you had to walk for miles. And
Well, you didn't think of it, Brian. It was life in those days.
it was a different style of life.
And it was a different style of life. And it was a better life in 101 ways. It was.
Kids didn't die of diphtheria. Don't die of diphtheria.
Yes, but there wasn't crime. There
No,
wasn't
there was
the
a lot of
crime that there
hardship
is
though. A lot
today.
of people lived in poverty and
There wasn't the crime that is today.
people went hungry in those days. You know, they starved, kids starved.
They weren't hungry.
Yeah, they went hungry.
No,
Did they not?
No. The mind you, we had clothes for school, and we had our best clothes to go to church.
Well, people do today, of course.
Not so well.
Well, dress is more casual today, yeah.
Yeah.
Was when I was young, we had best clothes. And
Yes, but no, they were happy times. You see, we lived at home. We were entertained at home.
you know, you couldn't get around. There was no radio, there was no television.
But did you want it?
We wouldn't have known what it was.
No, we did. I remember the first radio we got.
Mm.
We were talking about Paddy Finn. And there's one thing, you know, these things stick in your mind no matter how old you get, you remember them. We had one record on it. On one side of the record was Eileen Orlando and the other side of it was Kathleen Mahoney.
He wouldn't have been an Irishman, would he?
And Paddy was home on leave
Before he went away.
before he went away. We all went down to the station to see him off. And he left from Hunterville. It was at our place in Hunterville when he left. But we were playing this record, and part of that Kathleen Mahoney is a line where it says it may be for years and it may be forever. And I can remember Paddy looking at me and saying, yes, that's right, he was used to call me Oil.
You were 17. You'd have been very impressionable at that age too, yeah.
Well, I remember that very well in the front room of the family, just sitting there playing that record and said, maybe for years and maybe
How long
forever.
apart that was he killed? A couple of years?
Hmm?
A couple of years or less?
When he was away?
Killed.
No, he wasn't away long. He wasn't away long at all. He couldn't get home to Ireland to see his people. He was a bit distressed about that because there was trouble in Ireland at the time and they weren't allowed over there. Then, yeah, that's gone a long time ago, but as far as
What do you know about Dad's early life?
Dad's young life,
Yeah.
what I've told you.
He worked and then he got a stallion and then he started getting into racing, didn't he?
Yes,
And then he went into bushwhacking.
yeah, he went into bushwhacking.
How much do you know about that?
Very little, because that was just before the war. And that's where he met Bill McLaughlin's people.
Oh,
He met
Bill McLaughlin's dad, yeah.
And that's where he met his people. It was up Tiararoa, out from Tiararoa, that he was felling bush, and fencing and all that
At the back of Tuckamurra Bay, yeah. He used to say, I remember him saying that.
And he went on board ship at Gisborne to go to war. Then they
Dad
came-
did?
Dad did,
I
yes.
thought he was training in Featherston.
He came down to Wellington. No, he came down to Wellington.
He enlisted in the Rangitikei, didn't he? In Farmerston.
No, he didn't. He enlisted in Gisborne.
Did he?
Yes. Enlisted in Gisborne. He went away from Gisborne. But they came back down and landed at Wellington, and they were at Trenton for a while.
Yeah, because he rode the
But
horse
he
from the
went-
VIC straight across to the Hut Park in
He
the
went-
straight line.
Yes, he went away in the artillery. But you see, did he go in the Wellington
And he
Mountains?
took, and he took his,
In the Wellington Mountains, and then he got shifted into the artillery.
no, but
You see,
he told, you must, because he said they drove their horses over into the Wainuiomata Marta Valley to try them out with the 18 pounders to see if they were gunshot. They
Yeah.
fired the 18 pounders into the hills.
yeah.
Now they couldn't have done that if he was in the mountains. It was Uncle Ken that was in the mountains, wasn't it?
I think when Dad came down, when he joined his mountains.
Did he?
In
The mounted
Gisborne.
rifles.
And when he came down to, and had very short training,
Mm.
because he was in the main body,
Yeah.
and they had very short training down here in Wellington. And then he was transferred
The
to
artillery.
the artillery, because you still had the horses, and you still rode the horses in the artillery, you know.
Yeah, he used to lead. He was the.
He was on the lead.
Yeah, he was the lead horseman.
Yes. And
Because I can remember him saying, when you lead your team through the mud of France, that you
Yeah.
just trusted the horse because if you stepped off the duckboard,
oh,
you disappeared.
Bess and we had two Bess, and I forget the other one's name, but I know it was Bess and another one. And he was awfully upset because he thought that they would kill them for dog meaters, because they'd been so good and so trustworthy, you know, and he thought a lot of them. And, but they didn't anyhow, someone took them over there in France.
Well, you started off in Fielding in your married life,
Yes,
then you went up the Waitotra Valley.
yes,
Where did you go? What happened there? You were up there for quite some years.
yes.
What, 3 or 4 years? More.
Oh, well, we were in Waikari first. Ted was a baby when we went up.
You worked on sheep
On
stations?
Alexandra's farm.
Yeah. Now, was this a
And it
farm
was
or an
a-
estate, or how big was it?
Oh, it's a big estate, big
Mm.
estate.
Mm.
And you went up in through Waverley to there. And then it was a huge big farm. And then we shifted we went onto a farm called Waikari at first. And that was up from Waverley.
Mm.
That's where I was with Kit and Peter, and you were a baby for a week or so. And Papa furnished, and that's where we went. We saw I went to the place where they smoked the eels, and they were awful.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, when he got well, he was part manager. He was manager. And, Tom Alexander used to come up at the time. Jack was in college at the time. He came later. But it was a very big house. We were in up there. He never furnished the property. He only furnished a few rooms. And then they wanted him to shift over to the other side of the farm, and that was Orangamia.
I remember that name.
Well, that's where Leeds were.
Oh, the Leeds, yeah, they came into it, didn't they?
Yes. And that was up the Waitotra River. Well, Ted was a baby when we first went to Alexandra's, and Kevin was born when we were still up the Waitotra River,
Yeah.
so it'd be quite a little while.
So how many years would you say it would have been? Hello, we're starting to get a bit faint here, Nana. Gran, we
What?
need some electricity on the subject. It's getting dark and we haven't picked it up. There, that's better.
Oh, that's awful dark and awful bright.
Let's play this back, because I think we might have been a bit, might have got a bit dark without us realising it, you know.
You can put this one. What else?
What else have we got to discuss? You've got as far now. You're at the Waitotra Valley, and when did you finish up in Siberia Station? When Dad was so badly hurt. What year are we looking at now? Because Kevin would have been. How old would he have been when you left the Waitotra Valley?
Kevin and Ethel were going to school. They were on we went away to Valley. Now, we were in Hunterville then for a while. We went to Hunterville. for my
Because
daughter.
I was about 2 when Dad was so badly injured.
Yeah.
So it must have been shortly after that that he went to Siberia Station. We've got up to about 1932, 34.
Yes,
Well, I was born in 34, so it must have been about 36.
Well, you weren't at Siberia?
No, don't know whether I was not.
No,
Well,
you
I certainly don't remember.
No, you weren't, because we only had Kevin and Ethel and I. And Ted, by that time, was working for Harold Nation, the farmer. He left school when he was 15.
He's younger than 15, wasn't he? I thought you said 12 or 13.
No, he did. He was 15.
Was he? What was the age you were allowed to leave school at that time? Do you remember?
Well, it was one time you could leave when you liked. You had to go when you were 7.
Mm.
You had to go to school by the age of 7. But then it came down to 5. And, well, we were in Hunterville. We were in Hunterville during the Depression, and that's why we went to Hunterville. And
Your father would have been gone at this stage. He would have died.
Dad died when Kevin was a baby.
Mm.
Kevin
It was just Gran
Kevin
living on the
wasn't too-
property.
Yes, but they Gran sold it before then.
Did she? It
Yeah.
would have been too much for her to keep up.
Mm.
Because I can remember her as a very old lady. But she would have been.
She wasn't all that very old. She was only 80, about 83 or 84 when she died.
Oh, of course, that was 20 years. That was. Yeah, she wouldn't have been that old. She'd have been
She
late
she
60s,
was,
early 60s.
She was as old as I am now, in herself.
That would have been late 60s, early 70s.
People aged in that day. My mother, I never saw my mother go out. In fact, can't remember ever seeing her around the house much, in anything but black. She was all
Right.
black.
Yeah. And of course, the houses wouldn't have been as dry. They would have been. Life would have been just different.
Oh, we were quite warm. There was a fireplace in each room.
Fireplace in each room.
Well, not the bedrooms, of course, but there was the
The
stove
two
in
living
the
rooms.
kitchen. First of all, I can remember having a colonial stove in the kitchen.
Oh, no, there's a colonial stove.
First. What is it?
Mm.
Well, there was a big oven, a big oblong oven, and that was set in brick.
Mm.
And there was a space underneath it where you could heat it. You could have fire on top of it, and you could have fire in this space underneath it. I suppose it would be about a foot perhaps deep, and the full length of the
They had a chimney going up the back of it.
Oh, it was the chimney went up into it was a double chimney, you see. There was a double chimney. And as chimney, the part of it was in the kitchen, and then there was a space. It was like 2 chimneys in one. And there was an open fireplace in the other room, in the sitting room, the front room as we used to call it.
So we got as far as you were living in Hunterville, and Dad went to work out at Siberia Station.
Yeah.
And as I remember, he got his leg badly smashed up.
Yes.
Now,
But
he got badly smashed up with his leg. Now, what actually happened there? I know what happened, but you tell me what happened.
Well, he was working contract
Mm.
because it was just after the Depression, really. And he used to go out and work contract, you see, and we were living in Hunterville, in the house in Hunterville.
Mm.
Well, after a while, Mr. Price, the manager of Siberia Station, where he was hurt, offered him a house to live in so that he could come home weekends,
Yes.
because it might be 3 months before he got home. There was always a check coming every month, but he couldn't always get home. But he got home as often as he could. I'd get 2 letters a week. Well, he used to ride, because he was 5 miles back on the station, you see, and he had a horse to ride back on the station, and they had a little clearing there where they kept the ponies. Well, this morning, he caught the horse. No. There was the horse he used to have was a cream horse, cream. And she was quite good and quite steady on the feet. But Anne Price wanted her for the Taihape show to ride, you know, our country girls do. Couldn't have her that week, and he had to have this other
Flighty one.
that they call Brumby. And it was a Brumby. A Brumby's a, you
Rough
know,
horse, yeah. Half wild animal.
yeah. Anyhow, he had hang the job catching him in the morning, but he caught her with him in the end. And you see, the horse slipped in a sheep track going up the hill. You've seen the sheep tracks on
It
the
fell against Dad's leg.
Well, and his leg bridged
Of the sheep
that
track.
ditch, as it were, and the horse's weight fell on it, and it snapped it. It split it right up into the calf and snapped it across at the ankle. And
Oh, that was nasty.
he had to crawl about 3 miles backwards to get his mate to hear him. And when George came down and told them at the house at the station, he told me what happened. And of course I was terribly upset. Well, they took a spare horse back to bring him out. And they brought him out. It must have been winter time, I think, as far as I can remember. Because I know it was pretty dark. I can see him coming up now from the front gate up the driveway to the house. And he had his leg, he was holding this thing, he was on the horse, they'd sling him across the horse, and he was riding across this horse, and they'd cut the leg out of a pair of dungarees, trousers, and made a bag of it. And they'd put his leg into that bag, and he was holding it. And as he came up, we were waiting on the veranda to see him come. And he said, "I've got a big tuna this time, Eileen."
Big eel.
Yeah. He was trying to make a joke of it, he said.
You would have been in shock. You wouldn't feel the pain so much at that stage.
He felt the pain,
Did he?
yes, because they didn't want, we had to take him straight out to Taihape to the hospital in a little Morris car, in a mini,
Austin 7.
a little wee mini one was.
Austin 7, I remember.
And Price didn't want me to go. He said, well, no need for me to go. And I said, well, I'm going with him. And I went. And he fainted halfway out in Price. Even then Price didn't want to stop. He fainted with
Was
the
he a
pain.
hard man or a frightened man?
Who did?
No, Price.
I don't know what he was. I think he was hard, really, because he never bothered to do anything all the way out. Anyhow, he was in that hospital for months and months. He was a whole month with his leg on a weight on the end of his leg,
He was lucky he didn't lose the leg, actually.
You see, actually...
He was lucky that he didn't lose the leg.
Yes. He wanted them to take it off and they wouldn't. The bone was sticking through the calf from his leg.
So they had to put plates in it, didn't they?
They put a plate in they bridged the place where the bone was broken out altogether in the ankle, on the inside of the ankle. They bridged that with a steel plate, and they tied 2 wires round the top where it was sticking through his leg. You remember the long scar he had in his leg?
leg, yeah.
Well, he went for a long, long time. He came home, but he came home with it still in plaster. And I used to have to take the plaster off and massage it every day and put bandages back on again.
What did you do for money?
But you then were only little.
Oh, I must have been 2.
Yeah,
What did you do for money?
because you could talk
Swear.
because you swore at him.
You called him a
Because he was
bastard.
gonna hit you. I know he was a bastard.
Bastard. What did
Because that's what he used to call this leg. You see, he used to get a
what did you do for money?
well, your eldest brother
Supported the family.
went out to work in camp, so he never ever let us know. And he brought the money home.
Yeah, he did.
And you wonder why I felt so much of him by fully out of him. But we must stop that now. We'll go on to something else.
Now, he must have, he was, as I remember you telling me, see, it's very hard to get all these facts and figures accurately. But I reckon I remember you saying earlier on, and I think Ted told me himself, that he was about 12 or 13 when he went to work, not 15.
No, he wasn't that young. He wasn't that young. He wasn't that young.
Was he not? He went out and he supported the family.
He did more or less.
Yeah.
No, he didn't actually support us because I had to spend what money we had.
And you had a bit saved up.
We had. We were given meat. We had meat and potatoes. And,
Did Price help you at all?
well, of course, Pop was supposed to be insured.
He wasn't insured.
And they didn't have enough insurance. The insurance wouldn't pay out. We had to have 3 court cases to get anything out of them at all. Of course, we didn't get as much as we should have because we went in solicitor fees.
Mm.
But we got a little bit. And with that,
So, you're right, he would have, he hurt
and
himself.
by the time he got over his leg,
Mm.
and he was able to walk again,
Mm.
we had to shift down. He had to go down to Dr. I think it's Alexander. Oh, no, Dr. Ryan. Dr. Ryan.
Didn't you live with
Right.
Reeds and Riddler's Crescent for a while?
Yes, that's when we went down first went down to Wellington, when Dad had to go into the hospital and have his leg opened again. And they had to dig the
Plates
plate
out.
out of his bones.
They would have had to cut the bone
He was
away.
so healthy, you see, that they had to, the bone had grown over it and they had to come out. And so he had to have that
He
done.
never even had a limp much, did he, as I remember?
No, I don't think he did.
Amazing how he recovered from that. That was a really major
Oh, yes.
injury, wasn't it?
Yes,
He must have been a tough bird, you know.
And
He must have been a very healthy man.
While he was in hospital in Taihape, the returned soldiers went to see him.
Mm.
And they got for him what they called at that time a veteran's allowance.
Mm.
And it was £2.15 a week.
And how would that compare with that? Would have been
And
enough.
that's what we lived on.
Would that be enough to
And
exist
when
on?
we went to when we shifted to Wellington, when he had to go down to Dr. Ryan, you stayed with Auntie Rose for a few weeks. You were still sucking your thumb, and Uncle Art was going to cut your arm off.
Cut your bloody arm off, yeah. That would be why Auntie Rose had such a soft spot for me, I suppose.
Well, you had soft spot for one another, really.
Oh, I quite liked her, yeah.
She was with you quite well. She was a good woman. Anyhow, we sort of stayed in Wellington then.
This is out of Pokiori, I would have stayed, wouldn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were only there for a matter of, well, it might have been a month. It went long.
Mhm.
And we had the batch first, the back of Reeds.
Oh, I can remember that very, very vaguely.
Yes, well, we were at the back of
Then we
Reeds.
got this house in King's Crescent, number 11.
Yes. And when we got that, then you came down home to us.
And you shared the,
We shared the house. It was a big house, and we shared it with Evanses. And then Eva moved out. She wanted to go away doing some, I don't know whether it was hop picking or something down
and they
Nelson.
moved round to further around King's Crescent.
No, we moved straight across the road.
No, but the Evanses moved further around King's Crescent, further down.
They went up with his people for a while.
Mm.
And she went down, and then they were trying to save enough money to buy it and build a house.
And we lived in that house, number 11, from
We
when?
lived in number 11, and we had all these court cases because I took in boarders.
Yeah.
And I'd have spent.
And that's how Uncle Gordon came into the picture.
He came into the picture there,
Mm.
and he went to the war from there,
Mm.
and all the other boys went to the war from there. There was dozens of them went to the war from
Dozens?
there. And they
10?
all come back to see me.
There was I remember
There
Bill
was
McLaughlin.
3 of them. There was Bill McLaughlin, Frank Bennett, and Gordon. And they were the 3 musketeers. And then was Clary Pilcher was with them too.
And then the other ones came along later on. There was, forget their names now.
Oh, it was Don Rowe and Harry Jessen and lots of them was old, other old
So you just
chaps.
kept on keeping borders on for how many years? It was quite a while, wasn't it?
I kept on with the borders until Pop got some money. from the Kazakhs. And then we walked the house across the road.
You bought number 14 across the road,
Number 14, yes.
and that was when you started to get onto your feet to some extent at that point in
Yeah.
time.
Yes, but I still kept orders.
And you stayed there until 1950.
Would it be 1950 when we
Yeah.
shifted to... And I only went up to shifted up to Nai, so that I could get rid of the borders.
Could you?
And I remembered the fellow that was now, his name comes and goes, and I remember you saying to him once, he was reading a book, and you said to him, why don't you read a decent book? And he was reading some sort of cowboy rubbish, and you said to him, why don't you get a decent book? And he said, there's nothing wrong with this. You said, you can tell by the papers printed on it's no good.
Well, you got a good memory. I can't remember that. I must have been a cheeky little if I said that.
No, you weren't. But you were taught to like good books at
Did
school.
you? Oh,
And you always read good books.
well, you got a good memory. I don't know where you got that from, because I certainly can't remember that.
Yeah, and you can't remember those men were good to you. By golly,
But
those.
who brought me to Hornby train?
The whole of them together
Were they?
went, put the hat round. You were in hospital.
Was suspected meningitis.
You had, yes.
Well, I didn't have it though. I couldn't have had it. I wouldn't be as well.
They reckon you had a meningeal germ.
But they wouldn't. You couldn't have. If you get meningitis, you don't get over it like that.
You had lung punches.
Yeah, I can remember those. They were bloody painful.
Because
Young
they're
and old as
painful.
I was, I can remember those.
Yes, they are painful. But no, the men were awfully good to you. I was good to them too. They had a home there. They used to do what they liked. They came home one night, in the middle of the night, it was Good Friday, and they were out on the rantan with some women, I suppose, and there was nothing open to get anything to eat.
So they took the beat.
They'd come in and raided the blasted kitchen.
Who was that?
Gordon, Frank Bennett, and Gibson, well, I forget Gibson's name.
Hoop Gibson.
Hoop Gibson, yes, Hoop Gibson.
Oh, he was named after that cowboy
Yes,
character.
he
What's his name?
He was a bus rider.
Mm.
He had a brother that stayed with us for a while too, and he was a very nice fellow. Oh, I suppose Hoop was all right, but Hoop believed gay or not. He told me. Because you see, there was always plenty there, and I had a big made a big bed to scold.
Remember we had that big table that went over number 14. It was a great big long table.
Yeah. It was always
And those
full.
chairs that came from the DIC in Wanganui.
Yeah, it was always full. I bought them from Grant Faggy.
Now you were harking right back. I think we've just about covered everything. You know, you could go on and on and on,
Yes,
but
you
more would come to light as you came along.
Yeah.
Back in the early days on your farm, when you were a child and you had your horse and your split skirts, and they're not called split skirts anymore. They're called
Yes, I know.
culottes.
Yes.
And Mary says they're culottes now.
They're slightly
All the women are wearing culottes,
They're slightly different.
are they?
They're slightly different. But they look more like skirts. So
What were you wore in those days?
covered right over the front. The things come right over the front. And you didn't see the split in the front at all.
No.
Well,
And your father used to give you 5 shillings a week, and lots
no,
of
he gave me
sharp.
half a crown.
Half a crown. That's
For
a
half
fortune in
crown
those days.
when we finished the milk run.
Because he would have been at the more affluent part of his life at that stage.
Well, I would work really hard for him. I done all the milk run.
You're
for him.
avoiding the issue there, Mum. He would have been at the more affluent part of his life in those days.
Well, he must have had the money or he wouldn't have given
That's
it to me.
right. That's right. And he could afford to indulge his youngest daughter.
I wasn't his youngest daughter.
Or nearly his youngest daughter. There was only one.
I was the one that done the work with him. I worked with
What
him.
about
all
Annie
my
Coons?
life.
Didn't she do any work?
Hmm?
Didn't Annie Coons do
No,
any
she
work?
was spoiled. She was spoiled. She looked a few cows afterwards when she grew up. She was spoiled, terribly spoiled.
Auntie Rose would be gone at that stage, was she?
Yes.
When did she get married? How much before you?
But she got married after the war.
Well, you got married after the war too.
Yes. She wouldn't be married that long before me. Perhaps a few
Did she have a big wedding, just a quiet wedding
few
too?
years. She was married long ago.
She married George Agnew. And Auntie Coon married George Schindler. And who else was it? Auntie Kit married Frank Cox. Was it Frank Cox?
And Peter's still alive and he's 97. And he's living with his
Peter
granddaughter.
Cox married Peter Cox.
Auntie Auntie Nora, really, it was. Her name was Nora Catherine. And called the Kit, the Catherine family.
Well, who was the one that really fell out with Gran? It was,
Oh, I don't say she fell out with Gran, but she was a very proud, conceited person. That was Auntie Cat. She lived in France. She was the only one who was at my wedding because she was in France.
how long's she been gone?
The last time I saw her, Murray took me to see her. And I've always remembered Murray for that. He took me all round all the old ladies that day. And that must have been terribly boring for him. He said, "No, Gran, this is your day." And he took me to see Auntie Coon and Auntie Cat, and then up to Silver Street to see Auntie Lil. She was in the hospital.
And what about Auntie Moll? When was she married?
She was married in Hamilton,
What was her name?
Reed,
No, what was her proper name? She wasn't named
Mary, Mary Agnes, and they
Mary.
called her Molly.
Oh,
There was Margaret Mary,
what was his name? What was Picky Reed's name?
Albert,
Albert. And when were they married? Where were they married? Wanganui too?
now Hamilton.
Where were they?
Auntie Rose went up.
He was a butcher in Hamilton, was he?
He was a butcher, yes.
Was this before the war or after the war? Through the
Before
war?
and after the war.
They were married before and after
They
the
were
war?
married before the war.
Well, folks, that's it. Boy, am I glad I've got that. We had an accident today with a cassette. And thanks to Bernard, we were able to get it put together again and recorded. And I was,
He put it together
yeah,
again.
Bernard put it together again. I was a very disappointed man. I thought I'd lost it all. I was very... Boy, am I glad I got that. Because it's quite priceless. I'll never get it again.
The reason why it was like that was because we've used this tape over and over and over again, and
Oh, I don't know.
the tapes don't last very long.
I don't know. I think I was doing something wrong. I don't know. I just broke it. And I was very disappointed. I thought I'd lost it. I think I've lost a bit of this tape actually. I think what happened was we were...
They don't want all this.
No.
Stop.